Alistair Stevens.
I'm Elizabeth Ray.
And Tom Cruise is Jack Harper in Oblivion.
I feel like we just did this. We just did Jack Reacher.
It's back-to-back Jacks.
It's back-to-back Jacks.
It's a back-to-back Jack attack. This is an interesting little trivia note here for Tom Cruise fans. He plays Jack in 4 movies. Can you name them?
Wow. Okay. Well, obviously there's Jack Reacher, and then there's this one.
And?
Have we seen another one already?
We have.
Uh-oh. He also plays Jack in... Oh, is it War of the Worlds?
It is not War of the Worlds,
That
no.
was Joe, I think. But anyway.
I don't remember what it was
I think
in
it
War
was
of the Worlds,
Joe.
honestly.
Yeah.
Something working class, obviously.
Something working class for sure.
He plays Jack again in the Jack Reacher sequel, of course. But
Naturally.
no, his 4th Jack, Legend.
Oh, of course.
He's
I
Jack
knew
of the Woods
that.
in
Jack
Legend.
of the Woods. Of
Yeah.
course he's Jack.
That means statistically that Tom Cruise has played a character named Jack in 9% of his movies, which is like more than you would think.
That's
It's by
weird.
far the most common name for him
Yeah.
personally. So I did
He
a little...
is kind of... He works as a Jack.
It's
You know?
weird, right? It fits him because it is that very middle American.
Yeah.
It's not, excessively Midwestern, but it is very middle American. And I found this so fascinating that I actually went down a bit of a rabbit hole. I went to look at the work of Stephen Follows, who is a data analyst who works in several areas, including film. And in January of last year, he compiled data from 8,415 movies released in the last 20 years, including 50,000 named characters, in order to discover which names are the most common in American movies. And the answers will not surprise you.
Right,
honestly.
Jack and Mary.
Mary's very high. Mary is, in fact, the highest female name on the list.
Nailed it.
The most common name, though, not Jack, John.
John, sure.
Tom Cruise has only played
Jack
one
is notorious
John.
domesticity for John.
You would think so, but not apparently in the Americas. Not in the colonies, darling. Tom Cruise has played only one John in his career. Can you call it to mind? I'm not going to really test you on this, but if you have it right
there. No, go for it.
John Anderton in Minority Report.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure, John Anderton.
So
yeah.
2.7% of all characters in movies produced in America over the last 20 years have been called John. Jack is the second most common name. 1.9% of all characters have been called Jack. The third most popular, David. 1.7% of all characters have been called David. Cruise has played 2 Davids. Can you name them?
2 Davids. Let's see. David.
A very early one.
I don't know.
Taps. He plays David Shawn in Taps.
Yeah.
And then David Ames in Vanilla Sky.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4th on the list is Paul. 5th on the list is Michael. Frank is 6th on the list, perhaps surprisingly.
Frank is kind of surprising.
1.45% of all characters in movies are called Frank. Cruise has played one Frank in Magnolia, of course.
Yeah.
Next on the list is Mary, and then I'll just run down here. Mike, Joe, Peter, Sam, Tom, James, George, Bill, Jimmy, Sarah. Thank God we have 2 female names on this list.
This is so embarrassing. Yeah,
Ben,
this is terrible.
Charlie, and Robert. No, what's interesting here, though, is that it is proving something fascinating, but it's not proving the fascinating thing that you suspect, because only 59% of names in scripts were traditionally masculine names. The real reason that we don't have more female names on the script is that there's just more variety in the traditionally female names used, which I find fascinating. We really clump around certain male names, but we tend to use more unexpected female names.
Yes. There's still something patriarchal happening here. I can feel it.
Oh, there's like 6 patriarchal things happening. Yeah. The other really interesting thing that Follows discovers in this study, which I'll link to in the show notes, is the gender imbalance in non-gendered jobs or task roles. That is, if the role in the film doesn't have a name attached, but is simply labeled for the profession of the character, like dancer or driver or, post office worker or whatever, then we're seeing a big gender swing there. And I'll note that we're very deep here in the mire of the gender binary, but, go with me. Nurses are overwhelmingly likely to be women, of course, but every other professional or vocational category listed is more likely to be a man than a woman, including, amazingly, 70% of on-screen reporters. If the character is just labeled reporter, 70% likely to be a man. 75% of on-screen doctors, which is maybe not as high as I would expect. The one that really shocked me, 90% of bartenders. If the listing in the script is just bartender, 90% of those turn out to be men.
A very masculine industry for sure.
And apparently 100% of soldiers. There is no instance in the last 20 years of a character just being listed as soldier and that character being cast as a female actor. Isn't that wild?
That's terrible, and I wish I was more surprised by it, but I am at least depressed by it.
Which is almost the same.
Almost the same.
Depression is almost the same as interesting. Which brings us to Oblivion, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a really interesting episode of The Last Hour in Hollywood, because not only have we not recorded for a few weeks, not only are we in an entirely new recording setup where we are sitting closer together, and thus there is a more intimate ambiance here.
But also, you're also facing away from me in a weird way.
I am kind of. I might fix that while you are busy with the trailer game, which you're about to do.
Already?
But the thing that we ought to note here, I suppose, is that you don't really like this movie.
It's not for me. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not that it isn't good, probably. It's just that... I have very few notes, and my last note just says, very confused.
Love it. I believe Roger Ebert's review of this was, okay.
I promise to try and be smarter than very confused, but yeah.
If something here is not smart, I'm inclined to believe that it is the movie rather than you, my dear. But by all means, take us into the trailer game, why don't you?
Jack Harper has everything a man could want. A steady job with a steady income, a house with modern architecture, an infinity pool, a pretty wife that only seems to despise him some of the time, a real sweet helicopter motorcycle plane, and his very own cottage in the woods where he can just be a man's man and talk to fish. But everything is not as it seems. He's dreaming of another pretty woman who also wants to be his wife. And Morgan Freeman depends on him to save the world. In a movie that's supposed to be dystopian, but feels kind of great, actually. Here comes Oblivion.
I mean, in the end, isn't that what every man wants? For Morgan Freeman to rely on him?
Like, the thing is... what is he trying to escape exactly? You know?
He's trying to get to the truth, man. He's trying to peel back the layers of reality.
Oh,
luckily, this movie has at least 3 more layers of reality than it really needs. Because this is just twist upon twist upon twist.
It just keeps zagging.
I'm so glad that you called that the infinitiest pool, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is an
Which
infinity pool.
Awesome.
Dialed to 11. It's wild.
Infinity in every direction.
Do you like the house? Do you like the Sky Tower here?
Again, not to my taste, those like cold lines, but it filmed beautifully. Like the cinematography of all those scenes where they're talking together with the sunset behind them was flipping gorgeous and pretty undeniable.
Yeah, we'll talk about the cinematography as a whole in just a little bit, but I will give you the factoid here, which is that looks so great because they're not doing like blue screen substitution for the skies behind them. That is actually a 500-foot muslin panel that is suspended behind the set that they built, on which they are projecting from multiple different HD projectors. They are projecting 4K images of the sunset over Hawaii.
That's so theater kid.
It's rear projection, you guys. We went all the way around the corner and we've come back to the tech from the 1940s.
It just looks better. You don't have that weird like fuzz around all of the characters where their hairlines look weird, and I feel like I can always tell with the green screen.
One of the few things that I think we can really agree about when it comes to this film is that it looks gorgeous.
It really does. Yeah, the production design's a real win all the way throughout. And the sound design, too, I thought was really extraordinary.
It's a technically beautiful film, which makes a lot of sense because it comes to us from Joseph Kosinski, who is born in Marshalltown, Iowa in 1974. He comes into the industry in 2010 when he is hired out of nowhere by Disney to direct Tron Legacy, as the name suggests, legacy sequel for Tron. You saw Tron Legacy?
I didn't see it, but I saw so much promotion for it, and it looked really cool. And of course, the music was iconic.
Yeah, it is incredibly stylish. It is an incredibly polished bit of production. It is not necessarily a great film.
Yeah, no one ever told me to watch it.
Weirdly leery and male gazy when it comes to
isn't Olivia Wilde in it? Yeah, that's what we do with her.
The extended shot in the middle of the film where she is just reclining on a couch while conversation is happening in the scene, but she is not contributing to it, and we're just watching her. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird movie. But the reason that Joseph Kosinski gets hired for this is that he's going to be obedient because this is really Sean Bailey's baby. That's the Disney producer who shepherded the whole production, who insisted, in fact, that they make a legacy sequel to Tron, a movie that nobody even really remembered. Like, the name had more weight than the original Tron movie.
And I thought it was actually a video game.
There was a video game sequel to the original movie that was produced in the late 1990s.
Okay.
Which was a very good and like progressive and narratively speaking, very progressive and interesting video game back at that point. But yeah, Tron was pretty much a dead brand. Bailey brings it back and makes the sequel. And I guess we've got another upcoming sequel to look forward to as well, which is weird. They hired Kosinski in 2007 before they have a script, and Kosinski's audition for the role is to direct and cut together a short proof of concept demonstrating the new look and feel of the Tron world. So what if we did Tron, in 2010?
Yeah.
That's really his audition piece, and they liked it so much that they gave him the whole movie. This gets Disney to greenlight the whole production, in fact, and Kosinski shoots the whole thing in 67 days in Vancouver. It makes $400 million at the international box office and just secures his place in history because that is the highest grossing debut movie ever.
Wow.
Which, as I say,
That's
has to
pretty
come
baller.
with a really significant asterisk, but is still a major
That's
success.
a nice thing to have on your resume.
Yeah. So Kosinski's already developing the idea for Oblivion before he's even hired for Tron Legacy. And with the heat of Tron's success, he can now start moving forward. He initially begins working on a graphic novel treatment of the story, and he gets the attention of Radical Studios in LA, which was going to publish the novel. He takes the money and continues to work on it.
Wait. So he also wrote the graphic novel on which the film is based?
No graphic novel.
What?
There is no graphic novel. He started working on the graphic novel. He took money to publish the graphic novel, and then he sold the movie rights, and the graphic novel never materialized.
Wow.
It's okay. The studio Radical Studios, who gave him money for the graphic novel, owned points on the option, so they made their money back.
Okay.
And how? Nobody lost money on this deal, but it was a weird approach. And afterwards, he was very public saying, I never intended to write that book and never intended to publish that graphic novel. I was just working at the look and feel of the universe so that I could put together a lookbook deck for pitching to studios.
That's amazing. Wow, that's pretty
kind of ballsy.
I know
if
I said
you
that
do
twice,
it
but
once.
it's true. Yeah.
You don't ever get to do that stuff again.
Yeah.
After the success of Tron, a bidding war breaks out on Oblivion, and Disney secures the rights for an undisclosed, but from context, very generous amount of money. Disney brings in Karl Gajdusek to rewrite Kosinski's original script. Gajdusek makes his reputation as far as his reputation goes on the 2011 Nicolas Cage, Nicole Kidman movie Trespass, which was very popular at the time, but has left no lasting impression.
Yeah, nothing.
He would later wind up showrunning the first season of Stranger Things for
that I've
Netflix.
heard of.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's around this point that Disney realizes, hey, this movie doesn't sound like a fit for a PG, all ages appropriate movie. So they're getting nervous about the budget. They're getting nervous about the billion-dollar potential of this.
It's just PG-13 though, right? I noticed the one fuck.
It is
like,
PG-13.
They got their one and they really used it.
But at that point, Disney was interested in two things: maintaining an absolutely squeaky clean PG rating across the board and making $1 billion on every single movie that they released.
Reasonable.
This was going to do neither.
Yeah. No.
So they had to cut it back. And there is a real question, I think, whether the threat and violence, this is also at a point where the MPAA is getting a little tricksy about not just what is shown explicitly, but like the mood of the piece as a whole.
Sure.
So Disney writes off the option. They just say, thank you, but no thank you. I know we paid you a lot of money for this, but we don't want it anymore.
Wow.
So Kosinski and Radical Studios take it to Universal, who buy it again.
Okay.
That's right. He managed to sell the script twice, which is impressive. They greenlight a $100 million PG-13 production and, most importantly, introduce Kosinski to Tom Cruise. The script is then rewritten again, this time by Michael Arndt, who was one of the hottest screenwriters in Hollywood at the time. He debuts with Little Miss Sunshine and then writes the screenplay for Toy Story 3, two obviously very similar films. The latter is nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. The former wins Best Original Screenplay. So he blows into town like a hurricane and just really establishes his reputation fast. Universal Pictures chairman Adam Fogelson described the Oblivion script as, quote, one of the most beautiful scripts we've ever come across. Production is now ready to begin.
One of the most beautiful scripts we've ever come across.
Yes,
that really makes me want to read it.
The original
it's
script...
not in the language or the dialogue, I should say.
Yeah, the way that it is written in production notes. Yeah. The original script is apparently very evocative, and then Arndt just like pulls it together and tightens it all the way up, except... Well, no, I think you can defend this actually as a tight movie, because it doesn't really waste a lot of time doing things that it doesn't intend to. It's just that perhaps it intends to do a few things too much.
It does do too many things.
We'll talk about that when we get into the beat by beat, I guess. Jessica Chastain and Olivia Wilde are both considered for the role of Julia.
Chastain.
Yeah, which finally goes to Olga Kurylenko. We'll talk about her in just a moment. Kate Beckinsale and Haley Atwell are both considered for the role of Vica, which goes to Andrea Riseborough.
Huh. Okay.
Haley Atwell, too warm, I think.
Yes. Kate Beckinsale could do it. Haley Atwell, too warm.
Probably not famous enough at that, or not famous in the right way at that point, because she's already deep
But
into
I don't know
Underworld.
this other woman at all.
Andrea Riseborough. I think that's maybe a gap in your knowledge of like weird British theater actors
Yeah,
other than anything
sure.
else. But yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't look doesn't look familiar to me at all.
Well, we'll talk about both of them, but we're going to begin by talking about, of course, Morgan Freeman. This is Morgan Freeman's second appearance. Well, first appearance, second credit in the Tom Cruise filmography, because of course he previously did the voice for War of the Worlds. He did the intro
That's
and
right,
outro narration there.
yeah.
But here we get to see his face, where
Yeah.
he is costumed really brilliantly.
He looks really cool.
I love him in this.
It's funny because initially I felt like the scabs reminded me of like something out of Jim Henson's Muppet World. You know what I mean? They had a real, or even like a Star
dark
Wars-y, dark
labyrinthy,
crystal labyrinth. Yeah, there was something going on over there. But then once he just got into his human clothes, he looks really cool.
The introduction of feathers, I think,
the feathers is
in
weird.
The costume design is such a strange choice, but I do kind of love it. Morgan Freeman is born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1937. He discovers acting in elementary school. He wins a statewide drama competition at the age of 12. He turns down a scholarship from Jackson State University after graduating high school so that he can enlist in the Air Force, where he serves as a radar repairman for 4 years. After leaving the service, he takes acting classes and attends City College in Los Angeles, after which he begins his career on stage as both an actor and a very well-recognized dancer. He works on a number of movies and TV films, but he really breaks in 1988 at the age of 51 when he is nominated for Best Supporting Actor for the movie Street Smart. 2 years later, he's nominated for Best Actor for Driving Miss Daisy. 5 years after that, he's nominated again for Shawshank. He finally wins Supporting Actor for $1 Million Baby in 2005. Morgan Freeman has never won a leading actor Oscar, which is surprising.
It is surprising.
I mean, he is so good in these supporting roles. It almost feels like a waste when he's in a leading role, which hasn't happened for a while, admittedly. But it is perhaps surprising that he's never really taken home the big statue. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which we did an episode on over on the Patreon. 7, Amistad, Deep Impact, an absolutely pivotal role in Deep Impact. Christopher Nolan's Batman movies. He talks about penguins. What can't America's favorite grandfather do? He's fantastic in this movie.
So wonderful. I always like him.
A lot of Lawrence Fishburne. It's a lot of Morpheus.
That's okay.
And Morpheus I think that that's okay.
Yeah. And there's some Matrix adjacent stuff happening here.
It's a very similar archetype. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think he's terrific. And God really doesn't put a foot wrong in this movie. Just is really good wonderful. All the time. Yeah. Unlike, perhaps, Olga Kurylenko, who is not maybe so great in this movie.
I was not impressed with either of the women in this movie. But to be fair, I don't think they're given almost anything to do.
I am absolutely going to defend Andrea Riseborough, and I'm absolutely going to oppose your idea that she's not given anything to do. I think that that is an incredibly nuanced and complex role, and she delivers a lot of it. I will admit that she is in a slightly different film than everyone else.
Yeah.
She is giving like steely domestic drama. Where we're kind of playing the melodramatic notes under the surface a little more. But there are moments in her performance when I'm absolutely loving it. She has this thing where she will deliver a line and her face will be giving one emotion, and then her eyebrow will quirk and it will completely change the inflection of everything she just said in a masterful way.
Sure. Maybe it's just the character that's not doing it for me then, or that I feel like doesn't have anything to do. I couldn't understand her motivation most of the time. Like, she's just drinking all the Kool-Aid? Because she seemed to be in cahoots with Sally. But if she's not, then I don't understand her at all.
My read of it, and we're kind of really jumping to the end of the movie here, but my read of it is that she is extremely smart. She is extremely aware of her surroundings, perhaps even more aware of her surroundings than Cruise, because she doesn't leave the Sky Tower. She's there all the time, and she's the one, as you say, that's interacting with Sally. I think she is putting it together. I think the thing that the movie does not communicate to us really very effectively, except for one moment in the weird flashback right at the end, is that she is genuinely in love with Jack. I think that she is protecting the facade of their life together because she loves him. And she loves him in a way that goes deeper than this companionable domestic arrangement, you know? Because that shot right at the end in the flashback during the NASA mission, where they take the picture that is so iconic through the whole movie, and he is so physically uncomfortable in that moment, and she is so invasive of his space and identity in that. I think that moment is brilliant. I think that is an absolute knockout moment of cinematography there. And I buy that as a kind of explanation for everything that she's feeling through the course of the movie. She knows that something's not right, which is why she is occasionally very cagey about him pushing at the fringes of their shared experience. She knows that something is not right, but she wants to protect it rather than find the truth.
Oh, sure.
That's my read.
Sure, but it's still like in a villainous, manipulative, I want to keep you to myself sort of love.
Yeah, she's disinterested in getting to the truth.
Yeah, it was always her, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's working for me a little bit better. I will say again, I had a lot of trouble following this movie, so there's going to be a lot of moments where I'm like, oh, throughout this podcast, I hope.
And I think that this really is the big problem. We've kind of talked around this a little bit, but there are 4 big twists in this movie, and any film cannot support more than 2.
Yeah.
You just can't do every possible high concept version of a sci-fi movie in the same sci-fi movie.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have, oh my God, mission control is aliens, and also you are clones, and also the world is not what you thought it was, and also the bad guys are secretly the good guys.
Yeah. It's a lot.
And it's why this film spirals out in its last third.
Yeah.
It's the slow motion spiral.
I was
right?
going to
It's
say,
like
because the
going
first
into a
third
skid
is
on a snowy
boring.
road.
Yeah.
I like a lot of the stuff that I can
You
completely
do?
see why you would find it boring, but there's a lot of the combination of extremely high production value and
That is
this
true.
like sci-fi conceptualization. I just find so interesting and so rich. But,
yeah.
Let's shift gears and we'll go back to talking about Olga Kurylenko,
Sure.
who we obviously don't want to talk about. She's born in November of 1979 in Berdyansk in Ukraine. She moves to Paris at the age of 16 to become a model and is extremely successful. Within 2 years, she's appeared on the cover of both Vogue and Elle magazines, as well as appearing in the Victoria's Secret catalogue. She begins making films early in 2004. She's cast in the anthology film Paris Je t'aime, opposite Elijah Wood
Sure.
in her little segment. She's the exotic beauty in Timothy Oliphant's Hitman movie in 2007, based on the video game. She's the exotic beauty in Mark Wahlberg's Max Payne in 2008, based on the video game. And then she's one of the 2 candidates for the role of Camille in the James Bond sequel Quantum of Solace, opposite Gal Gadot.
Yes.
And they made the wrong choice because
They
she's
did.
extremely bad in that film.
Wow. Yeah.
Could you imagine
Yes.
Gal Gadot in Quantum of Solace? Like Quantum of Solace, not a good film.
I was
anyway.
going to say, Quantum of Solace is one of those movies that no matter how many times I watch it, I don't remember it. Like, no matter how many
completely see that,
times.
yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, it suffers by comparison with Casino Royale. It suffers because of the decision to set it 5 minutes after the end of Casino Royale.
Right.
So it feels like an extended epilogue. And I have found that if you watch both movies together, if you watch those 2 films back to back, Quantum works far better than it does by itself. But particularly when it's isolated, it's not that good. And I'm afraid that she is a real problem. She's a real drag at the heart of that film.
Too bad.
And it's hard not to imagine that Gal Gadot would have done
She's
a better and more competent
Yeah.
and more interesting job there. Kurylenko will eventually appear in Terrence Malick's To the Wonder with Ben Affleck and Rachel McAdams, which was very well respected and was
Yeah.
coincidentally shot in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, all the way
No
in the northeast of
kidding.
the state.
Yeah.
Yes.
They do a lot of films up in Bartlesville.
Apparently they
I
do,
don't know
yeah.
why exactly.
She's
I've never been.
continued to work a lot since Oblivion because, say what you like, this woman works. She finally secures her place and her paycheck in the Marvel Universe as a gender-flipped Taskmaster in the Black Widow movie,
Okay.
which was not very well regarded, but
Yeah, I didn't see it, so I couldn't
it's
say.
kind of deep in the mire of the Marvel
I've
Cinematic Universe
really
there.
fallen off the Marvel train, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's me and Bucky.
No, it's true. You were also captured by Russians and
true.
turned into a Manchurian candidate.
Yeah.
Now you only watch DC movies and talk about them online.
That's my secret cool arm. I don't know.
Andrea Riseborough was born in Newcastle upon Tyne in northern England in 1981. She's part of the People's Theatre of Newcastle during her high school years and then attends RADA, graduating in 2005. She establishes herself very quickly as a part of this new resurgence of British literary theatre and film in the early 2000s. She has this weird career that feels like she did 20 years of work in 5 years. She plays Margaret Thatcher in The Long Walk to Finchley. She appears in Made in Dagenham in 2010, which is Sally Hawkins movie. The brilliant Sally Hawkins leads that movie about a feminist strike at the Ford car plant in Dagenham in London.
Cool.
Really interesting movie.
Yeah.
That same year, she's in the adaptation of Graham Greene's novel Brighton Rock with Andy Serkis and John Hurt. The following year, she's in the movie W.E. with Abby Cornish and Oscar Isaac and James Darcy and Richard Coyle, which was directed by Madonna and is one of the larger box office bombs that you're ever going to encounter. Yeah.
Okay.
She's in Birdman. She's in Battle of the Sexes. She's in The Death of Stalin by Armando Iannucci, which is fantastic. She's in a bunch of psychological horror movies.
Wow.
And then she was very well received very recently as Matilda's mom in the Tim Minchin musical version
No
of
kidding.
Matilda. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And I don't know how
Matilda's mom. That's a wild casting for her.
She is wildly cast. That's the thing about Andrea
Wow.
Riseborough, is that she's just a very flexible, kind of classically trained actor.
Okay.
Yeah. Without context, Riseborough took part in a Q&A interview with The Guardian newspaper in 2016, in which she was asked very casually, "What's the worst job you've ever had?" And she replied, "Either shredding duck in a Chinese restaurant or Oblivion."
Uh-oh.
So apparently she didn't have that good a time making this movie.
Yeah.
Has not. I did go looking and has not really talked about it publicly other than that. But as I say, I will defend her in this one. I think she's genuinely fantastic. We should also spend just a minute here, and by just a minute, I mean probably longer than he appears in the film. We should spend just a minute talking about Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
Yeah.
He is born in Rudkubrig in Denmark in 1970. He grows up in a tiny little village in the middle of nowhere with his mother and his two sisters. He becomes fascinated with acting early in his life and winds up attending the Danish National School of Theatre and Contemporary Dance, from which he graduates in 1993. He makes his debut on stage as Laertes and immediately gets noticed. He spends the rest of the 90s working in Danish film and theatre. He begins his Hollywood career in 2001 in Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down, though he continues to work in the US and in Europe thereafter. He's in Enigma. He's fantastic in Enigma. He returns to Ridley Scott for Kingdom of Heaven. He's in Wimbledon with Kristen Dunst and Paul Bettany. And then he's cast as the lead in the very short-lived Fox series New Amsterdam. He is, of course, cast as Jaime Lannister in 2010. The show airs in 2011. He gets this role on the strength of that first season of Game of Thrones, which, to be fair, not his best work in the series, and certainly not the most interesting Jaime that we get. The second season of Game of Thrones premieres while they are on set for Oblivion. What do you think of Nikolai Coster-Waldau? And what do you think, I suppose, of Jaime Lannister?
I think he's great and lovely. I think Jaime Lannister is one of the all-time great character arcs to follow. Really, really extraordinary. Of all of the letdowns that I had with Game of Thrones in season 8, I liked what they did with him. I really did. Right. Yeah, it was upsetting, but it was compelling. And I thought, like, narratively, I don't know, satisfying, I suppose.
And it's interesting, too, that he has such a well-established reputation as being a solid dude. Like,
yes.
I don't think there's anyone out there who has a bad word to say about him as a person, right?
Yes, absolutely.
He's really active, too, in philanthropic work. He's been a United Nations Sustainable Development Ambassador. He's campaigned against sexual harassment and violence. He's worked with the Danish Red Cross and with the Red Campaign. And he has calmly and politely defended the artistic integrity of the end of Game of Thrones just everywhere on the internet.
Wow.
Like, he won't go looking for fights,
yeah.
but if someone comes at him, he will just be polite. He will be courteous. He will be like very efficient in his language and will just defend. No, that was the story. Yeah, I'm sorry that you didn't like it, but that was the story that we told. We didn't do anything wrong. We just made some choices that maybe you don't agree with. And I kind of love that position. He seems like a very centered and grounded dude.
Yes.
He's basically completely wasted in Oblivion.
Yeah.
Like, I could have played that part for all the influence that it had over the... I mean, he's a good looking dude, don't get me wrong. But
he is, for sure.
we don't really need an actor of that caliber, I think, in that tiny little
presumably
Sykes
a healthy paycheck for him, though. Which
you can only hope so. Yeah. Although, by the time that they were done with Game of Thrones, those guys were earning a lot of money. If you managed to stick out the whole 8 seasons of that show, you were earning a lot. The cinematographer on Oblivion was Claudio Miranda, who begins his career with one of the wildest shifts that I have ever seen. His first film is Failure to Launch. Famously the movie that almost kills Matthew McConaughey's career stone dead. His second film the following year is additional photography for David Fincher's Zodiac.
Okay.
Then in 2008, he's Fincher's cinematographer of choice for Benjamin Button. How's that for 3 movies to transform your life?
Wow.
Failure to Launch, Zodiac, and then Benjamin Button. He works with Kosinski on Tron Legacy. He shoots Life of Pi for Ang Lee. He wins the Academy Award for Best Cinematography, in fact, for that.
Yeah.
Then he shoots Oblivion, and after Oblivion, 2 years after Oblivion, he shoots a little movie. I don't know if you've heard of it. Little film called Tomorrowland for Brad Bird. So I guess we're just going to have to put that on the poll for next month. Because it ties in so beautifully with his excellent cinematography. I think we both agreed previously in this podcast episode. In fact, excellent cinematography. So that'll be appearing on the Patreon poll for next month, because I just can't have enough of a good thing, I guess. We're going to talk about Miranda again, and we're going to talk about Kosinski again, of course, when we get to Top Gun Maverick. He's also the one who is shooting the upcoming F1 film for Kosinski. He's also working on that.
That makes so much sense.
Brad Pitt. They were just shooting again at Silverstone a couple weeks ago as of this recording. Yeah. I cannot think of a movie that we are more likely to see on opening night in a movie theater.
Right? I'm kind of bummed that we won't get to see Twisters this weekend because we've just got too much other stuff going on. Because I'm going to an award ceremony.
Yes,
But still, it would be cool.
I was going to do a bit there.
Sorry.
But
I just
no,
fell
the
right into
power
it.
of taking that bit for yourself
I'm so sorry.
was the greatest
I'm
thing I've ever
embarrassed
seen.
now.
No, that was amazing. Yes. You are up for some awards. You and your production team are up for some awards.
Yes.
For a very short film that you made recently for the 48-hour film project here in Oklahoma. It's going to be a star-studded night.
I think we got
dramatic and exciting.
15 total nominations, which is great.
Yeah, out of 19 total categories.
Yeah,
it's like there's not much that you weren't
there's not much
nominated for.
Right, it's true. So that's
and
really exciting.
competition for these things is fierce. It's really
Fiercer
interesting.
every year. Yeah, there was an all-time record of teams turning out this year. It was a big one.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the films, and I can't wait for you to come back with silverware, honestly.
I don't think I will this time, but maybe next time.
We'll see.
Maybe.
Oblivion shoots between March and July of 2012, primarily on sound stages in Louisiana, but also in New York, California, and notably for 10 days in Iceland, which is where they shoot all of these incredible exterior shots. And as I say, we have second unit work happening in Hawaii too, just to get, shots of the horizon. Hey, take these incredibly expensive cameras, fly out to Hawaii, and just shoot sunsets for a couple weeks. Why don't you? It's not a bad gig,
tough job.
We will pay attention to that date, though, between March and July of 2012. That will be significant, and we'll circle back to it in just a moment. The movie's released the weekend of April 19th, 2013. It comes in at number 1 at the box office, ahead of the Jackie Robinson baseball biopic 42, the very stupid animated movie The Croods, the very stupid franchise killer Scary Movie 5, and the very stupid G.I. Joe sequel, G.I. Joe Retaliation, which weirdly didn't kill its franchise, although it should have done. The following week, Oblivion will be pushed down to second at the box office by the Mark Wahlberg, Dwayne Johnson, Anthony Mackie movie Pain and Gain, which will be forgotten by time, obviously, judging by the look on your face, and will be subsequently completely overshadowed the following week by the $174 million opening weekend of Shane Black's Iron Man 3.
Oh, yeah.
A real candidate for the secret best Marvel movie.
Wild.
I think that's a terrific one. Ultimately, Oblivion would make $286 million worldwide off of a budget of $120 million, which is a modest hit.
Yeah.
It's particularly modest in the year that Iron Man makes $1.2 billion worldwide.
Yeah.
That is what we are doing. We have crossed the Marvel threshold. We are now deep into these movies, making an absolutely unconscionable amount of money. And I mentioned the timing, and it's interesting for a couple of reasons, because we haven't here on the show talked about Tom Cruise's romantic life for a few episodes. But now we have to dig back into it, because Cruise and Katie Holmes have their child, Suri, in April of 2006. That's the month before the release of Mission Impossible 3. It is right at the nadir of Tom Cruise's popularity. Right. Tom and Katie get married in November of that year, and then things are pretty quiet until she relocates the family's primary home to New York early in 2012. In June of 2012, in an interview with Playboy, Cruise, unprompted, praises Holmes' creativity and charm. And then on June 29th, deep into principal photography on Oblivion, 4 days before Cruise's 50th birthday, Holmes files for divorce after 5.5 years of marriage. She is awarded sole custody of Suri in the very brief divorce proceedings, which seems to be the reason for the relocation to New York. Because in New York, it's real easy to get sole custody, and in California, it's incredibly difficult. Holmes has not spoken publicly about it, of course, but it seems as though her decision is motivated by a desire to remove her daughter from the influence of Scientology.
Yeah.
Cruise famously hasn't had a relationship with Suri in the years since, despite maintaining very healthy and positive, by all accounts, relationships with the children that he adopted with Nicole Kidman years before. And that is the end of Tom Cruise's public relationship history, if you are willing to discount the rumors that he is dating every one of his co-stars on every single one of his movies for the rest of time, which is just part, I think, of the marketing cycle.
Part of the marketing cycle, yes, agreed.
So Cruise comes out of this production cycle 50 years old, single again, already signed up for his next movie, Edge of Tomorrow, and this is the point where we really enter the last phase
he really is
of
looking
Tom
great
Cruise's
for 50,
career.
I have to say.
Yeah, I think
looking great.
But this is also it now. Like, with one exception, which is the forthcoming American-made movie that we're going to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
With one exception, he is going to do things that we have seen him do before from here until the end of his career. There's nothing else in his filmography from this point on that isn't really doubling down on what you expect from Tom Cruise. We've got another Jack Reacher movie. We've got Edge of Tomorrow. We've got a stack of Mission Impossibles. And they're all kind of giving us that best and most classic flavor of Tom Cruise. And it's interesting at this point in his career to consider, more than a decade later, to consider whether or not we're going to see something else from him as he continues to age and presumably will eventually age out of doing this kind of stunt work, this kind of action work.
Yeah.
Whether there's a hope for a late era swing from him into more character actor performances or just more interesting work. I'd love to see him, I don't know, maybe have like a Hugh Grant renaissance right at the end of his career. So that's all of the background on Oblivion. Let's get into it, shall we?
Let's go.
We open on this mysterious satellite and the ruined Earth and the corroded Universal logo, right? Even before we start the film, we get the studio logo.
I wasn't sure that the film had started.
Yeah.
That was cool.
What do you think of messing with the studio logos like that?
Oh, I like that.
Universal
I always like it when Warner Brothers
often.
does it for Harry Potter.
Warner is
smart.
The team that will do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Matrix ones, of course. Christopher Nolan gets to mess with those all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like there was an original Batman one, right?
The original Batman one?
Maybe not original.
The Tim Burton?
Some of the original Batmans, I feel like, had that. I seem to recall, but maybe not.
I honestly can't remember. That does seem like something that Joel Schumacher would want
Warner
to
Brothers?
do. Yeah. It's
well, then
Warner,
maybe. Yeah.
Warner all the way. Yeah.
This is the kind of thing my brain usually does that is correct, even though I cannot cite it or tell you why I think
justify
it
this.
in
I
any
just
way.
know it.
I just think I know it in my brain. I could be wrong.
We've been having those discussions about epistemology over on Stars and Swords as we were finishing out the last book in our series. We were finishing out Great Expectations. And yeah, that idea of a justified true belief.
Yeah.
You have all of these true beliefs.
Yes.
But they're not justified. You can't back them up at all.
So it's not real knowledge.
So in a sense, do you know?
Which is what I say. I don't really know.
Do you just intuit?
I just feel it very deeply to be true. And often it is true.
We're in New York before the war. It's black and white. It's shot through with sepia. And then we cut to Jack waking up 5 years after his memory was wiped. He and Victoria, Vica. What do you think of Vica as a contraction for Victoria?
Guess it was okay in this sense. She works as a Vica, certainly, and I certainly like it better than Vicky, which I have never really liked. But
sure, the diminutive would not work here.
Yeah. I thought, you know what? I'm going to go with. I thought it was cool.
Okay,
I think Vica is cool.
It's sci-fi. It's awesome.
Sci-fi and cool. I don't know.
They are closing out their tour of duty. Oh, that's when we get the huge nuclear explosion of the moon being destroyed and the world being destroyed and alien invasion and war and only wreckage is left.
Was really cool.
Yeah.
The idea of the exploded moon was cool. The way that it wrecked the Earth was cool. And it just sitting in the sky, just kind of hovering in pieces, was really unsettling
degrading
and awesome.
On its orbital path. So you can see like the shadow, like the penumbra behind it. It's
really cool.
Basically, I'm racking my brain now. I think basically everything in this movie looks awesome.
Yeah.
I think it is designed so beautifully. And then when we are just shooting, I think we really do. Yeah, a great job. I guess the only thing that I'm a little over is when we get the POV drone shots and they still have the digital overlays, the heads-up display like it's Terminator in 1984.
Oh, yeah.
That stuff, I think we've maybe moved a little past that now.
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
But apart from that, I think the movie looks just gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
We learn that the people of Earth have wandered off to Titan, the moon of Saturn.
Wandered off, I like that.
Only a few people are left.
On their bicycles.
Yeah, only a few people are left on those cool little electric motorbikes. Yeah. Only a few people are left on the Earth protecting the giant fusion plants that make energy from the oceans for the new colony. 4.5 minutes of very heavy-handed, very serious exposition.
Which I think already threw me out because it's very heavy-handed. It's very monologue-y.
Yeah.
And then how is it that we're making this fusion power? How is the best place to make that Earth if we're living on Titan?
Making power from splitting water is actually a really good way of making power. If you've got a fusion power plant, you can split water and turn it into energy. Yeah, that is true science.
Okay.
There's not many places in the solar system where that kind of raw resource is available as easily.
Okay.
So you weren't swayed by this voiceover. It didn't really carry you into the film the way that it's obviously supposed to, right? The reason that we offer this exposition so clearly in such an unadorned way is that we just have to do the necessary lifting to get you to the story.
Right.
And it failed for you.
I think ultimately, yes, it did not hook me in as much as I would have liked it to.
Is this how you would have done it as a filmmaker, right? This isn't just one high concept, but as we've said, multiple high concepts operating at the same time. Would you have done it with this kind of voiceover, or would you have taken something more gentle?
I would have taken something that made me feel less lied to at the end of the movie. You know what I mean?
That's a risk too.
Like, I really don't like that when you just look me in the face and tell me lies. I'm counting on you to tell me what this world is. So don't bullshit me.
No, and
even
that's
if the
fair.
whole thing is going to be, well, this guy who was telling you was bullshitted. Okay, but that's not helping
Yeah, but
my
there's-
trust in the author and the narrator.
Yeah, and there's a superposition of character voice into narrative voice when you
Yes.
give them voiceover.
Absolutely.
Like we assume that to be
Yeah.
true because we've been conditioned by a century of movies to understand
Exactly.
that that is what is happening.
So I would not have given it voiceover. I would have given it, I don't know what. I don't know how I would have done it. There's no easy way to do it, but to somehow make it come from Sally would have been the way to go.
Possibly, but then, yeah, I mean, you run the risk of getting into it. As you know,
Exactly.
the entire population
That's
of Earth
the problem.
is...
And it's all a mess. All of that is terrible. Yeah.
I do think that there's maybe a problem in this film of over-explanation, right? This is
Yes.
common to fictional worlds that have been extremely well-developed, right? Really rich fictional worlds, is that you want to, as an author, you want to demonstrate your work. You want to sit down and show everything that you've created, even out to the periphery. And we don't really need to know some of this stuff. I think that leaving this as a shape, leaving this as a sense impression, rather than offering narrative specifics, might have made that onboarding a little easier. I will say, for complete transparency, I ate this up with a spoon. I love this. This is so good. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really powerful. And obviously I've seen this film before, so I knew that it was going to fake us out in several different ways. But I find this setup, it is so high concept.
It is very high concept. It really is. And I will say again that it looks stunning.
Yeah.
Like whatever these the reservoirs are, or the power,
The fusion plants?
fusion
Yeah.
plants. Those are so cool. Like
They're
everything
so
looks
hot.
really awesome.
I think the Sky Tower looks amazing.
looks great. The Sky Tower looks great. The moon again looks amazing.
His little bubble plane.
His little bubble plane is cool.
Is so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks great.
Yeah. So 4.5 minutes of very serious exposition. Then we hit the title card and then we are into it. We learn that 2 drones are down and Jack has to go and fix them, or a space boss lady with the broadest accent.
Stupid accent. I really
Will be
disliked her
upset.
accent from the beginning, and she sounded so much like AI, which she
Yeah.
basically is, I guess.
She
Sort
is.
of.
Well, she's some kind of alien impersonation.
Some kind of alien impersonation of a person.
Of
Yeah.
the actual mission control. This is, again, the film kind of doing something that I love, but doing it just too late. Doing it
Yeah.
too little and too late. Because when we get the real Sally at the end of the movie, when we flash back to the NASA mission,
Yes.
she's fantastic.
She's
And you
great.
totally
Yes.
see how they picked up all these little... I love how unsettling these repeated phrases are all the way through the film. The way that we're using that dialogue as a means of like destabilizing our sense of what is natural and organic. We're really leaning into the idea that something here is wrong.
Yeah.
I do kind of like that.
So you liked the whole, are you still an efficient team?
I do like that. And I like every time that Vica responds to that, because we don't just do this call and response.
Right.
It's something
she
that
says
is
something different every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like your read of why that is, of because she's kind of obsessed with him in a really unhealthy way and is just determined to make... I mean, you didn't say that. You said in love with him. I'm going to say obsessed with him in a really unhealthy way.
Look, she is manipulating.
And
If I
manipulating
am
the fucker
right,
their whole life,
then yes,
yeah.
she is engaged in an active deception and understands. You know, if
Yeah.
she is aware of that enough to know that she has to lie, then she is aware of the magnitude of this lie.
Right?
And that, it does make her kind of a villain, which I think is the role that she occupies in the film.
Yes.
I think that that's okay.
Yes. Yeah. I was expecting more of a villain role, in fact.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of
Interesting.
backloading some motivation for her.
You
on
are,
that,
but I like
it
it.
makes
It works
sense
for me.
to me and certainly makes sense of her performance. Yeah.
Yes.
So we learn that the drones are down and that Jack has to repair them. Vica plays nice with Sally while Jack ventures into the storm. He almost loses control of his ship, but then he remembers, oh wait, I'm Tom Cruise.
I'm awesome.
Effortlessly the best.
Yes.
And everything is fine. He finds the drone in a ruined football stadium, which I think is such a fantastic
cool.
set.
Yep.
This location rules. He puts on his Yankees hat and then he goes to work. He's fixing the drone with his gum while he's talking about the Super Bowl. We're maybe leaning on Tom Cruise, blue collar guy, a little hard.
Weird
here.
to me.
And then we drop it for the rest of the
Yeah.
film. This is not who this guy is.
I
This is not who he is
know.
for the rest of the film.
Yeah. It's odd. I never quite get a handle on Jack Harper.
Well, is that deliberate though, do you think? Do you think that he is somewhat unknowable because he himself does not know who he is, right?
Yeah. And you know, that's Morgan Freeman's whole thing. Like, I saw you pick up a book and then I knew you were a different one because you were curious. I'm like, what?
I knew you were a guy because of a book in a hat.
You're a real guy.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. We'll talk about it when we get there, I suppose, but I marvel at the fact that these survivors are not more traumatized. Every single person that they knew in their life was murdered by a guy who looks like Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
And yet this Tom Cruise walks in and they're like, okay, you're
We're
good
gonna
with
give you a
us.
shot. Yeah.
Oh, a reader, are you? Okay. You got that personal pan pizza, I see. Okay. He fixes the drone. We do a jump scare with a dog, which we really don't need. And then we have the ominous presence of the aliens. And I love the way that we're shooting this. I love the way that we build this sense of dread, right? In the landscape. It's so strong to me. He unpacks his motorcycle. He goes in search of the other missing drone. This bike, by the way, is real. The constraints of the design limit its distance, its operating functionality to 20 minutes because they just didn't want to load it with battery packs. But the bike is actually real. Riding it around is actually real. It's not an effect. Kosinski gives one of these bikes to Cruise for his 50th birthday.
Aww.
4 days after his wife files for divorce in New York. Probably not the best birthday of his life, but he got a motorcycle out of it, so that's pretty cool. He finds the missing drone. He abseils into the New York Public Library, and here we get our first real set piece. We also get the part of the movie that feels to me most like a video game. This feels like it feels like The Last of Us. It feels like Uncharted. It feels like, you have to, like Tomb Raider, right? You have to navigate this space and solve these environmental puzzles to get all of the treasures and pickups and collectibles that you can find.
Yes. Yeah.
Does it work for you?
It was a cool set piece. To me, the problem was this is the second time in a row we have, oh no, the worst possible thing has happened. Never mind, it's fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like at first when he goes offline and we think that something's going to happen, he's going to crash, but then he's just fine.
He just continues to be awesome and excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
He isn't really challenged at any point.
Right. And then when something, there were two here and I can't remember what, but it went from the thing about to get him, but instead he was fine. And
the line breaking, I think, is the real moment. Yeah. And him dropping back down into the...
Yes. Yeah. And then he just comes back out again and it's fine.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is that Drone 166, the drone that he just repaired, comes to the rescue, which I think narratively is really great because these drones are ultimately, of course, not going to be friends.
Right. But
bringing it in here and having it ally itself with him, I think really works. I think it's a very strong moment and lets us establish how important that security protocol is, that the drone recognizing him being such an important part of this interaction. That's really works. Yeah. And we learn at the end of this, of course, that the scavengers took his bike, which is also just really funny.
Yeah.
Feels very petty to me. He finally makes it back to the tower. He starts having flashes of his dreams again. It turns out that the book that he found is a copy of The Lays of Ancient Rome by Thomas Babington Macaulay, published in 1842. The passage that he reads that we read again and again through the course of the film, which is fantastic. What a beautiful piece of poetry. That is the favorite piece of poetry of Winston Churchill. And it's used in the David Tennant Doctor Who episode, The Impossible Planet, which is the one that introduces the Ood, if you remember that.
Sure, kind of, yeah.
Jack gives Vica the plant that he got for her, which she immediately takes outside and drops off the balcony. Yeah, I just love her in this movie. I think it's so good. I'd really love to actually sit and just pick out one or two scenes that we could watch again and just see if I am really seeing something there or if I'm not. I think it is just as likely that you're right. I'd love to hear from our listeners.
But I was going to say, if she was in love with him, obsessed with him, whatever, you would think that she would be really touched by him, thinking of her in that way.
No, because she has to protect the protocol. She's protecting the mission. They're not allowed stuff like that.
Yeah.
They have to go by the rule book because if they don't go by the rule book, she doesn't know, presumably, what would happen.
Yeah.
But this perfect little idyllic life that they have in the ultimate penthouse suite would very quickly be over. Okay. So that
I hear you.
Hooking that into so we must play by the rules very carefully is maybe a little bit of a harder stretch, but that's my read, at least. They have this moonlit dinner, and again, the set here just gorgeous.
That was maybe my favorite. Yeah, the moonlit dinner was so gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yeah, with the candles. That was really just unstoppable. That was beautiful.
Jack reflects on the fact that the scavs weren't trying to kill him, but just catch him, and Vica distracts him by swimming nude in, the infinitiest pool.
Yeah.
You can't get more infinity than that pool.
It's awesome.
Wow. How do you feel about the very gendered, I was talking earlier about the way Olivia Wilde is shot in Tron Legacy. I feel like we have a little imbalance here over how we shoot male figures and female figures in this movie. How do you? Does it feel unpleasant to you, or does it just feel like, yes, because this was a big budget science fiction film in 2013?
Yeah, and because we're so deep in his POV, I think it didn't feel so weird. I guess
the normal kind of gross.
Just the normal kind of gross.
Yeah. I kind of feel the same way. And honestly, there's no reason that we couldn't have been more casual with Cruise's nudity. I think it would have felt more provocative and more interesting and more suited to the environment of the film. To this kind of milieu. I think something a little more grown up would have been welcome at that point.
I agree. Yeah.
We cut out to Jack waking up from a dream, and we look out to see this nuclear detonation on the horizon because one of the fusion devices has been destroyed. Jack goes to investigate. He finds, and this is complicated. He finds a signal radiating from the top of the Empire State Building, which has by this point mostly been buried. He sabotages the signal, then flies out to his hidden valley full of life into secret cabin that he's known about for long enough that he has built a cabin there and stashed who knows how many.
Oh, he built the cabin? He didn't just find it?
It's possible that he found it.
No, he did say something about built. I knew that he would have built it because I'm him. I'm home.
There you go.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Fucking weird movie. There's a lot going on is all I'm saying.
So you can maybe see why Vic is feeling a little insecure in her relationship, because this guy will apparently just drop off for days at a time. Come back with splinters up to his arms in mud.
Right.
Having built himself a cabin out in this, secret valley. He plays a record, shoots some hoops. He's just such a regular guy. That's the thing about Jack Harper. Just such a regular guy. An unidentified object crashes to Earth where the scav beacon was pointing, and despite being told to leave it alone, Jack goes to investigate. He finds life support pods with 5 people inside, one of whom weirdly is the girl from the dream.
The girl from his dreams.
This is our first
His dream girl crashed to Earth, and he gets to rescue her.
Isn't that amazing?
Such a boy movie.
Yeah, it's Vanilla Sky all over again is what it is.
Insane.
What if your life was just perfect all of a sudden? It's so weird to do these 2 reversals back to back, right? To have, oh my God, it's the girl from my dream. And then, oh my God, drone 166, my best buddy drone from before who saved me, now murders the rest of these people. This is already starting to feel like a lot. I think just the pacing of doing the signal from the Empire State Building and then the hidden cabin and then the pod coming to Earth.
I was really feeling things unraveling at this point.
Yeah, a little bit. It is surprising, but it is maybe surprising for the sake of being surprising more than for the sake of like narrative transparency. It turns out that this woman's name is Julia. Vica fills her in on what's been going on in the movie so far. She just shows her the DVD like this is Spaceballs, I guess, as well as telling her that she has been suspended in that casket for 60 years at least. But how can that be? Because she recognizes Jack. Jack and Vica talk about not remembering the past. Vica points out that Julia is here because of a scav beacon. The scavs coincidentally are outside in the night, watching and plotting. We're kind of tightening everything up here. And maybe this works better if this film is half an hour shorter than it is. But at this point, we're building a lot of pressure and we're going to try and maintain it and not let it out for what feels like a long time as we're watching the movie. The next morning, we go out to the downed ship to recover the flight recorder. This is a pretty strong set piece, I think, with the scavs showing up. It turns out that they are, in fact, human-looking aliens. This is reversal number 3, for those of you keeping track at home. Quoting Macaulay, Morgan Freeman tells Jack what's really been going on and asks him to reprogram a drone to carry a nuclear weapon scavenged from the Odyssey to destroy the Tet. We get Sykes casually shooting Jack in the chest just to demonstrate intensity, right? It's just, show me that you're serious. Okay, I'll shoot this guy right in the chest. And then they bring in Julia to coerce his obedience. It's a big turn. Was this one that you saw coming?
It's a lot. Sort of. I knew something was going on with the alien things because they looked too weird.
Yeah.
And
it's not how you would design actual alien characters.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So something was going on there. And also because I was already in a place where I distrusted the movie so much that I knew they were going to be pulling out rugs. So I was just kind of waiting for them.
So you really did come into it not with the good kind of, ooh, this movie is twisty. This is like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. I wonder if I can figure out what's really going on. Because the movie does kind of lean pretty hard on the idea that things are not what they appear to be. But you just felt insecure in the hands of this narrative.
Yes.
That breaks any hope of like narrative suspension. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. Which is why then I was just like, why is he agreeing to this so quickly? Why is he just like, yeah, sure, I'll nuke the thing that I thought was home to, you know what I mean? Like, it's like really fast.
It'll take us some time to get there for sure. We survive a drone attack. Malcolm gives Jack back his gun and the motorcycle that we took earlier. Apparently we took the motorcycle just so we could return it now when we need it most. He and Julia ride off into the desert. They wind up again at the Empire State Building where Jack sends Vica the signal and she dispatches the plane to pick them up. Julia tells Jack that the Odyssey was on the mission to Titan. Well, you know what? We'll do all of that again right at the end of the movie. We don't really need to explain it now because we are going to spend a full 5 minutes in full-on flashback right at the end of the film, which is a strange choice. What's more important right now is that while Jack and Victoria were on the Odyssey together, they weren't a couple. Julia was his wife the whole time. And in fact, they got engaged right there on the Empire State Building. Isn't that wildly coincidental.
So sweet.
I'm like,
Sure.
maybe we only built one set for this. The plane shows up. It shows Vica, Jack, and Julia embracing, and she cries a single tear. Poor Vica, or maybe not poor Vica, depending on how you read her motivation.
Yes.
This is where the stakes really get high, though. This is where Jack and Julia return to the tower. Vica won't let them in. She calls Mission Control and reports Jack. This is where she tells, this is our third beat with, are you still an effective team? And she says no, which activates a concealed drone inside the Sky Tower, which is pretty cool. And it, begins to very slowly attack. Honestly, like it's pretty chill about its timetable.
Yeah.
Julia fires the aircraft's weapon and destroys it. They flee. They lead the drones through the lightning storm, the dogfight chase through the canyon. It's extremely expensive. It's not terribly narratively compelling.
Did the drone not blow up Vica?
At this point, when it destroys the Sky Tower? Yes.
Yeah. It did blow her up. Okay, just making sure I was following that.
Vica. Yes.
A Vica. Yeah.
A Vica. Yes.
Okay, got it. All right, cool. Just making sure I'm following. Which was neat. Her floating down around him in ashes was unsettling.
Yeah. So they escape from the canyon dogfight. They skirt the edge of the radiation zone, only to be very conveniently struck by another drone and forced to eject. Jack emerges from the wreck to check the crash site, only to see, spoilers, another plane come overhead with another Tom Cruise in it.
Yeah, I did recognize that as Tom Cruise immediately, I will say.
It's interesting,
isn't it? I think you're maybe supposed to. But
you are absolutely supposed to, but also,
that's definitely Tom Cruise out there.
6 pixels high on your TV. Yeah, it's wild that he can communicate the Tom Cruise-ness at that kind of
exactly.
distance. Yeah. So did you see this coming? Did you see the twist of the clones coming?
Only then. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But as soon as I recognized him, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to do a clone movie, which, of course, sure.
Well, we're going to do a clone movie as well.
As
all the other movies
things.
that we're doing simultaneously. Yes. Tom Cruise fist fights himself in the desert, which
very
looks
cool. Looks
really
awesome
good.
And is great. Cruise versus Cruise was excellent.
Also, you can let him lose because he's fighting himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be subordinated. Dwayne Johnson has this thing in his contracts where he is not allowed to lose a fight on screen.
I did not know that. Is that true?
Thing. Yes. He is not allowed to lose a fist fight on screen. That is a part of the contracts that he signs.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is
I don't know if
wild.
that's every single movie. I know for sure that it's anytime he was working with Vin Diesel. He wanted to be very clear of a certain dominance there. So you have to do all of this creative narrative nonsense to get them out of fights without anyone possibly being considered the victor or the loser.
Yeah.
Julia is accidentally shot during this fight, which I think is garbage. I think the firing of the weapon is so forced, and the specificity of the shot is so forced that I didn't need that one so much. It was undermotivated. Jack at the last moment has to undo his bubble repair on the drone from the beginning of the film. He takes the other Jack's plane and returns to his tower where he meets his Vica. I found this really good. Again, to praise Andrea Riseborough here, giving this suddenly flipping the switch to being very warm, very domestically happy, and with none of the tension. It really emphasizes how far she has come in her depiction of the first Vica, right? The now dead Vica, from the beginning of the film. How edgy and brittle she became as her Jack ventured further and further afield. And of course, I think it's pretty clearly implied that this Jack probably does not have a secret cabin. He probably doesn't have a place where he goes. He's just more domestically integrated with her. So she's relaxed and kind of there's an odd sensuality to the way that she's moving. I find that moment really, really good. And also, let me take a moment to praise Tom Cruise for his acting, because I think he really nails it in this sequence. I think he's very good.
He is good. Yeah, I agree. I am bothered by the wardrobing here.
Oh.
I don't understand why Vica has a sheath dress and heels.
Yeah.
It's Stepfordy and weird.
It does feel as though she's maybe dressed up for the occasion, but we have to wonder
She almost always is wearing something like that, though.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's part of what has been architected between them, right? Because their domestic situation here, their romantic situation here, for want of a better word, isn't real.
Right.
So what are the suppositions? What's the cultural baggage that the Tet are unfolding in this, you're right, Stepford vision of domestic partnership?
Yeah.
That's obviously professional. They obviously respect each other. They obviously both have their tasks, their missions. But you're right. It does have a weird gender binary thing happening, doesn't it? Yeah. Jack gets the first aid kit. He returns to Julia. He treats her injury with the sci-fi medicine, and then he takes her to the secret cabin. I've never taken a girl here before. It's so exciting. They listen to Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum and talk about their memories of each other. Jackie's kind of, I guess, recovering some of his memories.
A little bit,
Although mostly he's just recounting his dreams, which is boring, as everyone knows. The next morning, he's decided that he's going to go to work. They go back to Morgan Freeman. He describes the fall of the Earth, the army of Jacks who went forth and sundered the lands of man. Jack reprograms the drone. The scavengers are ready for their strike, except the Tet has already dispatched the other drones. We're going to have a huge and interminable firefight, which is going to be depicted in just this series of disconnected vignettes. So we're going to keep cutting back to Nikolai Coster-Waldau, and he's just going to be heroic and awesome. We're going to keep cutting back to the delivery vehicle for the good drone that they have, and the guy in the turret there, who's going to be replaced by Morgan Freeman, who's going to be awesome in a turret for a little while. It just kind of goes on and on. He gives his last and inevitable sacrifice, and then, wildly, Jack and Julia have a moment in front of Andrew Wyeth's Christine's World.
Yeah.
Which
There's
I
so
love
much
that
happening.
painting.
Yeah.
I know.
It's
Even I am getting overwhelmed by the movie
and
at this point.
Here's what my brain is doing right now. Okay. So when the two cruises saw each other, when the two Jacks first saw each other, and they were like weirded out in the fight, how then were all of the clone Jack Harpers just sent to Earth to wipe out all of humankind, and they just did it without question?
Well, the Jacks who are working as drone repairmen in the Sky Towers,
they have a different memory wipe.
They have their memories wiped. Yes.
Okay. So
the other Jacks were presumably programmed in some way, right? We know from Sally that the Tet can, to some extent, unless we're assuming that Sally is like completely digitally generated and is not a real person at all, we're assuming that they can in some way, manipulate the clones that they create. But I don't know.
Okay.
Or maybe we can speculate that the Tet so efficiently lied to all of the Jacks, right? Just created a scenario that's sufficiently compelling that the army of Tom Cruises went forth. Which honestly, it's 2024. If the world is going to end, I give it like a 6% chance that it will be an army of Tom Cruises unleashed by David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology that will just scourge the earth. It's not possible. And if that happens, then I'm sorry for this podcast. I genuinely apologize for it. We didn't know. There's going to be some dreadfully ironic thing where someone finds a thumb drive with episodes of this podcast after the fall. Morgan Freeman is going to be listening to our voices, and he'll be very disappointed in both of us. And I can't imagine a worse fate than that. I skipped over it when we were talking about the unnecessary firefight in the Scav base, but they have apparently been scavenging great works of art and books and artifacts and what have you. Do you like their little underground museum that they have?
Yeah, sure.
It's kind of cool,
That's
right?
Neat. Yeah.
Kind of like the attention being paid to like the cultural history of Earth.
Right.
I think that works for me. And obviously, I love the use of Christine's World. I think that is a beautiful painting. It is one of my favorites. I spent a little time not too long ago discussing it over on Stars and Swords because it's weirdly conspicuous in rabbits. Yeah. Do you like that painting? Do you like that? Do you like the use of it here?
Yeah. Sure. Yes.
It summons for me the same kind of disquiet and discomfort that I get at the beginning of this film. Like it has a sense of artifice to it. There's something about the way that the buildings are looming on the horizon that they feel like they're applying a pressure to Christine in the cornfield. Yeah, there's something there that I really find super engaging about that painting. And I do find it complementary to Oblivion as a work.
Sure.
So Julia agrees to be the sacrificial lamb. They load the bomb onto the casket and then put the casket onto the bubble plane. And obviously there's a switcheroo here that we're not going to find out about for about 15 minutes.
Another twist.
And it's just unnecessary. Yeah. The only defense here is that Julia apparently doesn't know that this twist is coming either. She does seem to commit to this act of self-sacrifice, right? This literal suicide bombing that is going to take place to drive off the alien invaders. But yes, she is going to be switched out, spoilers, for Morgan Freeman, who's 1 billion years old and is honestly a better choice for this anyway.
And has said that he wanted to do it, that he just wanted to be there. Yeah.
So this is where we get this extended flashback sequence because as Cruz is flying toward Tet, he is replaying the flight recorder, which I love that he has it very carefully buckled into the passenger seat.
So cute.
He's listening to the flight recorder from the NASA mission, from the Odyssey, where Vica was his co-pilot, Sally was mission control for NASA, the rest of the crew was already in Delta sleep in their long hibernation. And yeah, I find it really hard to defend this because narratively this is bad and you shouldn't do it. You are draining energy out of the climax of your movie in order to offer yet more exposition, most of which we've already inferred, some of which we've already been told outright.
Yes,
but the rest we have absolutely inferred. My problem with this is that I really love the flashback. I think it's top tier performances from Cruise and from Riseborough.
It is.
And from the woman playing Sally, who I think is really so, after being so weird, for her now to be so warm and natural and unaffected, it shows the artifice of the earlier parts of the movie really cleanly.
And cool.
Yeah. Realizing that things have gone wrong, Jack jettisons the crew module. Vica refuses to leave him. They're captured by the Tet. And then, the entire movie happens. 60 years of history happens. Sally challenges Jack as he enters the Tet. And Jack cleverly tells the half-truth to evade her censors. In the whole of a million cruises, he finally gets to the heart of the Tet. He takes out the casket. He tells the Macaulay story. He quotes Horatius, except it turns out that it's not Julia in the casket. It is Morgan Freeman and a bomb. And we get... And how can a man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods? And all right, movie, you got me. All right, you did it. We get the very conspicuous PG-13 F-bomb.
Yep.
Which I think is great. I'm absolutely on a razor's edge about it.
It's fine.
It is adolescent, though, isn't it?
A little bit, but that's okay.
It's a particularly PG-13.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And then, the non-metaphorical bomb is also deployed and the Tet is destroyed. And then our epilogue, 3 years later, we pick up with Julia and her daughter, I guess.
So she was pregnant,
I guess,
in hypersleep?
I don't know. That by inference, yes. But it's weird that is the one thing that is not explained in the film.
So in hypersleep, you don't gestate your baby.
I guess not, right? She was floating around up there for 60 years and didn't age a day, apparently. So we can assume that that's true.
Wow.
Or she and Jack hooked up textually before he went off on his suicide mission.
Could be.
And, 3 years later is probably... I think that kid looks like 4 or 5 years old. I think that kid looks too old. I don't know. Maybe it's just a Survivor kid that she found. I don't know. Maybe there's a comic series that runs alongside this movie that tells us more about it. Oh, sorry, no. Because it's made it clear there would be no comic series. The other survivors arrive at the cabin led by Sykes first and then the alternate version of Jack, which is pretty cute, honestly.
Yeah.
The 52 version of Jack. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that's Oblivion. And the big problem with this movie is that it doesn't pick a lane. It tries to be every version of this story.
Yes.
It's like, if you start with this setup, what are all of the twists that you could possibly think of? And then let's do them all.
And then just do all of them. Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. Yeah. Even though I really, really like this film.
I know you like it
so
much.
Which twists would you keep? Which are the most effective for you? Or which are you most interested in?
Oh, gosh. Which twists? I like that the scavs were humans. I like that mission control cannot be trusted.
So you just want to do an inverse alien invasion story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. I think if you take both of those things, I think it works. I think there's a functional kind of, if Cruz is not like a weird memory wiped clone.
Yeah.
And is just a working Joe who thinks that he's trying to help the survivors of an alien invasion when in fact he is helping the aliens who have invaded.
Yeah, that's it.
I think that's decent.
Yeah.
I think you can do that. Yeah. I think that works. I think you can do the clone story also, because then there's a whole question about identity that this film is not interested in, right? This film has no problem with all the Jack Harpers are Jack Harper. Yeah. And presumably the army of Jack Harpers were also Jack Harper, which you're right, creates some really weird tension about our understanding of how the cloning technology works. The film, though, doesn't have space to interrogate these questions of identity, so it doesn't care, right? We behave as though Jack 49 and Julia are this like fated, destined couple, even though, he is one of a million billion clones of Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Which kind of
and now I guess they're putting Jack 52.
And now Jack 52
is the same to her.
They are, clones are functionally interchangeable despite their different life choices.
Yeah. Don't like it.
It's a little strange, right? But we don't have space to do what is identity.
Yeah.
In this version of the movie. So that would also be an interesting way to go is, you find out that you are actually sincerely helping the last survivors of Earth make a new home out there in the solar system. But there are 1,000 clones of you and 1,000 clones of your wife or your teammate also out there. I think that's also an interesting story, but you lose focus when you try and do too much and you bog down your film in too much exposition, in a film that is just too long, in a film that is, I think, somewhat compromised by some visually impressive, but kind of narratively inert action sequences. Yeah. The chase sequence through the canyon it really is visually stunning, and it really does look extremely expensive. And I think that is exactly the sequence that gets Kosinski Top Gun Maverick years later. But it just isn't exciting in like a very fundamental way. And then the same with the firefight at the Scav base, I think is also true. For all of that, though, the shots of the bubble jet approaching the Tet are gorgeous. All of the NASA stuff, I think, looks incredible. Just really, really beautiful. I think it's kind of a knockout movie. We have a really tough proposition now because we have to put this on the list of every Tom Cruise movie ever. And I dare say that if there were a clarified, distilled, focused version of this film, for me personally, it would be right up there with Jerry Maguire. I think it would be at or near number one on the list.
Holy smokes.
This version of the film is nowhere near that.
No, interesting.
So I have a pitch if you want to hear it, but I'd really like to hear where you would put this movie.
Sure. I'm thinking of putting it somewhere around like War of the Worlds and Collateral. It felt something like that to me.
Okay. My pitch is a little higher than that, I will say, because I think that this is demonstrably better than War of the Worlds and actually does a lot of what War of the Worlds is trying to do. War of the Worlds kind of compromised by a lack of focus, by a lack of commitment, by a lack of integrity. And I do think that Oblivion has a lot of integrity to itself and perhaps too little regard for its audience, right? Kosinski coming in here as the anti-Spielberg, I think. I would put it higher. I would put it around The Firm, honestly. I think that The Firm at number 8.
Number 8.
I don't think it's as special as Magnolia.
No.
I think it comes in as a like very technically competent piece. Which is what I think of when I think of The Firm.
Sure.
But
I would have to put it a little bit lower, but I can meet you in the middle around 10 with Valkyrie, which was also very technically competent.
That feels like we'd be putting it right above Interview with the Vampire. Does that feel?
That feels right.
These are opposite movies in many ways.
They are, yeah. And I enjoyed personally Interview with the Vampire more, but I think you enjoyed Oblivion more. So that sounds right.
Yeah.
This is a personal one.
No,
you personally really liked it.
I'll give it to you. That sounds like a good compromise to me.
Sound good?
I think that I think Better Than Mission Impossible 3 is absolutely the floor here.
Yeah.
So sure, why don't you slot it in above or below Valkyrie? You can decide whether or not it makes the top 10 on our list.
Oh man, yeah, that's tough when you put it that way, huh?
It's not in any way significant, I promise.
Fair enough. Okay, I'm going to say, I think, again, I slightly preferred Valkyrie, but I will say that Oblivion was a more technically masterful movie. It was so beautiful that for cinematography alone, I'll go ahead and put it above and give it the new number 10.
All right.
Yeah?
Oblivion goes in at number 10 on the big list of every Tom Cruise movie ever. A rare kind of late era hidden gem here. I think that a lot of people looking at the Tom Cruise filmography will have completely forgotten about Oblivion and completely forgotten that this film is, even as it stands, really quite good. Mostly because it's overshadowed by his very next film, in which, bear with me here, he's in a high-concept sci-fi movie paired with a very talented British actor. Next week on the show, we're going to be looking at Doug Liman's sci-fi Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow, also known as Live, Die, Repeat, based on the Japanese light novel All You Need Is Kill, a movie with 3 titles, all of which are bad. I love it. This is going to be a really interesting one. This is a strong candidate.
I'm looking forward to this one.
For the top of the list. I know that a lot of people really love Edge of Tomorrow. Okay. Emily Blunt, Bill Paxton is in this movie.
Love Bill Paxton.
There's a lot to look forward to next week. That's going to do it. Elizabeth, would you like to take us out by thanking our wonderful Patreon supporters who make this whole thing possible?
Absolutely. It is my honor and privilege to thank our superstar patrons, Leslie Skipa, Louise in Dallas, Megan Lauder, Phoebe, Art Kilmer, Kimberly Bear, Self on a Shelf, Jolene Stark, Chris Dawns, and the Lady Gordon.
Thank you all so much. You make this whole thing possible. You help us keep the lights on. And frankly, at this point, you're paying for the coffee, which is perhaps the largest and most significant expense. We'll be back next week with our discussion of Edge of Tomorrow with, I'm sure, more awards statuary here in the studio.
I really don't think so this time, but that's okay. It's an honor just to be nominated.
That's going to do it for The Last Star in Hollywood this week. We'll talk to you again very soon. Until then, take care.
Until next time.